Secretary Panetta, appreciate you giving us some time this week. I want to start with your reaction to the comments that we played from the White House press secretary about the dismissals of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and other top military officials. She says that decision was based on performance and lack of trust. You and 5 other men who held your position, I have the letter right here, William Perry, Chuck Hagel, Lloyd Austin, and James Mattis, feel otherwise, sending a letter to Congress saying you are deeply alarmed by this and this involves politics. Why do you feel that way?
Well, as Secretaries of Defense, we're very aware that our military leadership has to be apolitical, not Democrat or Republican, but based on their military experience, based on their battle experience, which many of them have, and based on the fact that they've provided distinguished service to the country. And that was the case with all of these officers that were dismissed. They weren't dismissed based on cause. There was no cause really shown. The only reason they were dismissed is because they were members of the military leadership during the Biden administration. And our concern is that if we are to keep the military independent, and if we're to keep the military to deal with military issues, we do not have to put them into politics. That's the last place we need our military leadership. And so all of us felt it was important to caution the administration and to ask the Congress to do some oversight hearings to ensure that military leadership will not be political.
So this letter was sent on February 27th. Have you heard from any members of Congress?
I've talked to some members of Congress. They share some of the same concerns that the Defense Secretaries indicated in that letter. I think at some point they are going to have to consider these issues, because if they're going to nominate those, or the president's going to nominate people to succeed these individuals, they have to go through a nomination process. And I'm sure these issues, one way or the other, will be covered.
And the lawmakers you spoke with, is it a bipartisan group?
It is. I've always had the ability to speak to both sides of the aisle, and I continue to do that.
Okay, so I want to ask you, too, about Ukraine. We've seen the back and forth with President Zelensky and President Trump and the vice president in the Oval Office. President Zelensky then, sent a letter to President Trump that seemed to soften his position on Ukraine. This past week ended intelligence with Ukraine. And then early Friday morning, the president posted on Truth Social saying that he was looking at putting sanctions on the Russians after there was a massive missile attack, and he wanted to use that and tariffs to get them to the table to try to negotiate a ceasefire. So it's been sort of this whiplash in the U.S.'s position on this. Does the fact that the president seems to be using tough talk with Russia now, do you feel like the administration is moving in a direction you would like it to?
I don't really know. This is a president who whiplashes from one position to another very quickly. Look at what he did on tariffs. And now look at how he's handling Ukraine. I really wish he would take a firm position here. If we're all interested in peace, but peace can't come at any price. That would be the worst of all results. And the best way to get peace is for the United States to provide strong backing to Ukraine, to provide military aid, to provide intelligence information, to support Ukraine so that Ukraine has some leverage going into discussions that hopefully can result in peace. I think that's the smartest thing that the president can do at this point, because frankly, Putin cannot be trusted. Putin is a tyrant. Putin is responsible for this war. And therefore, the president, if he really wants to bring the parties together, is going to have to give Ukraine some support.
Is that the pitch that you would make to Americans who are sort of turning on support for this war, saying, okay, we spent all this money. Why do we have to keep issuing, billions and billions of dollars to this effort? And it seems like there's no outcome that's going to be beneficial right now. What would you say to them why we need to be involved in this when they are asking, do we need to continue to support Ukraine? What would you say to those voters who are saying enough is enough?
I would remind them that a lot of very brave individuals in uniform fought bravely in World War II in order to make sure that tyrants could not invade sovereign democratic nations. That's what World War II was all about. And for 80 years, the United States and presidents, frankly, both Republican and Democrat, have stood strong to make clear that the United States will be a world leader, that we will support our alliances, that we will support democratic values, and that we will stand up to tyrants. We've done that for 80 years. And it is very important that today, when another tyrant has invaded a sovereign democracy like Ukraine, that the United States stands for the principles that we fought for in World War II.
I want to pivot now and get your comments on the president's speech to Congress this past week. And I want to give a fact here because it was the longest speech since your former boss, since one of his State of the Unions, Bill Clinton, in 2000. So Trump went an hour, 39 minutes. Bill Clinton held the record until Tuesday night, an hour and 28 minutes. That being said, the discussion surrounding the speech has seemed to center not focused on what the president said, but the reaction of the Democrats during that speech, holding up the signs, not standing for the child cancer survivor and the gentleman who was accepted into West Point. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are, frankly, that State of the Union speeches have lost their principal purpose, which is to describe to the American people the state of our union. Instead, they've become, and this is for both Democratic presidents as well as Republican presidents, they've become part circus, part political rally, and really don't relate to just exactly what is happening in this country. And I think that was the case with Trump's speech. I think we've had, frankly, State of the Union speeches that further divide us rather than bring us together. So I'm afraid that, it's not just the behavior of Democrats or the Republicans or the president. I think State of Union addresses have lost their meaning.
Before we go, we have a couple of minutes left. I want to get your reaction on one more topic, because you spoke at the Democratic National Convention supporting, at the time, candidate Kamala Harris. There's news out on Friday that she's considering a run for governor of California. Do you think she should run for governor, or would you like to see her take a crack at president again?
I am not going to jump in the middle of that one. She's going to have to make up her own mind as to whether or not she wants to run for governor. I would just urge her to make very clear that if she does run for governor, that she has got to be governor of California and not use it as a stepping stone to running for president. We need governors, very frankly, who focus on the job of being governor of California. I'd like to get back to that if we could.
I need to press you on that. Do you think we don't have that right now? Is that a mention of Gavin Newsom there?
Yeah, no, I think Gavin Newsom has spent too much time running for president and not enough time really being governor of California.
All right, we will leave it there. Former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta, we appreciate your time here on Inside California Politics.
Thank you.